Hi everyone, welcome back. It is Chess of Blades. It has been a week, and now we need to jump back in where we left off and answer a very important question, which is Rivian a bit of a jerk? I'm feeling pretty bad for Arden. It's been days, and I'm still not over how love struck he is. So, I'm going to load. For those who are new, Franz came in to save us from false accusations. I don't know why I did that. They are false. But let's see if we can actually solve any mystery at all. Is Rivian qualified? Am I qualified? Paris and Jim, thank you for answering the question. Are you guys ready to just do it? It's good. Thank you, Luna.
Why are you here?
To save Rivian. Someone has to. No alerts. Not tonight. It's Rivian's time. As she closes everything. Because she's the best. YouTube, no. Chuckling a little at our startled faces, the tall man dipped slightly forward in a mocking bow towards us.
My, don't you two know how to make a man feel welcome? It's a bit cramped in here, isn't it?
No, it's not. Do you see? They've commented on the size of the room. It's big enough for 3, or 4, or 5. His eyes roaming across the room, Franz pauses to study Alistair for a moment, who nervously shifts a little under his intense gaze.
I don't recall asking you for an interior space evaluation. What is your purpose in contaminating my chambers?
Contaminating. Harsh. Also, I'm into seeing them in the same frame. I think I decided in the gap that this is going to be a Franz playthrough. I don't know, though. While the two of them offer each other challenging glares, I glance out of the corner of my eye at the door. Make a run for it. Oh my gosh. Is that a choice? It's open, and the guard seems distracted by Franz as a potential threat. Oh. No. Don't give me horrible life options like that. I could try to make a run for it, although I doubt I'd get very far.
What a rude way of phrasing things. But to answer your question, I'm here to get my kitten off the hook.
Proprietary, but I do need to get out of this situation. Suddenly reaching out towards me, Franz curls an arm around my waist and pulls me nonchalantly up against his side.
Unhand me, you blasted! Wait, did you say you were getting me off the hook?
Before I ask how exactly you intend to do that, I'm curious as to how you were even aware of this investigation in the first place.
Franz knows all things. He is aware of all things. Linnaeus raises an eyebrow suspiciously, staring at Franz with unmasked distaste.
Well, I saw the little blonde here being carted off by the guard in the main hall. So I followed them. It was clear enough he had gotten himself into some kind of trouble.
I like pondering Franz. It's a good look. As he speaks, Franz squeezes my hip, as casually as someone embracing a longtime lover. How would you know? We heard you in the garden. We heard the garden confession. I'm a virgin. I'm starting to think I'd almost rather be taken to a cell than put up with this harassment.
I see. In that case, are you able to confirm his whereabouts from the period between the end of the banquet and the announcement in the main hall?
Franz nods confidently, lips curling in a winning smirk. It's winning. We need winning.
Of course. You were there too, Glasses.
That's not an
You
insult.
saw me follow him after he left the table. I was keeping an eye on him when he went to the gardens.
And did you hear him loudly proclaim his virginity to the world? Is that why you're here?
You followed me? What is wrong with you, you thick-headed perv?
Hi, Demi.
That may be so, but I have little evidence that your words are trustworthy. Your presence in the gardens at that time also implicates you in this matter.
This is where Riv just shoves him. He did it. I'm innocent. Make a break for the door. Interrupting my complaints sharply, Linnaeus drums his fingers on his forearm, returning Franz's smile with a derisive curl of his lip. Curl your lip more. I want to see more lip curling in the CG. Franz, however, doesn't seem to be fazed by Linnaeus' retort. In fact, if anything, his tone only grows more confident and firm.
It just so happens that a guard was with me at the time. I specifically requested his presence in case someone tried to jump the kitten outside. But it seems someone else got jumped instead.
Were you hanging out with Arden? How dare you? Actually, Arden deserves better. Please, save Arden from us. Someone needs to.
But my point is, unless you're going to start accusing your own guards of murder conspiracies, you can confirm my statement with him. The boy's innocent.
His unhurried words come to a finish, and Franz turns his head a little to glance down at me, squeezing a little lower down my hip. Calm down, my goodness. Get a room. Another room. This time, though, I feel too shocked to even protest. Was Franz actually watching me all that time? Did he really know something was going to happen? He doesn't seem to be lying, and isn't flinching the slightest, even beneath Linnaeus' icy, skeptical gaze. I can't believe it. He must have been telling the truth when we met on the balcony last night. Some serious things are in motion now, and I've been caught up in them. But how did he know?
Very well, then.
For a moment, Linnaeus gives me a long look, one that seems less accusing and more like, why did you toast to love instead of success? We could have been wonderful. Some kind of warning. Is he trying to tell me something?
Now, if you could refrain from wasting my time any further, please leave my chambers so that I can return to my investigation.
What are you warning me of? Am I missing out on an OT3? Because that's the only warning I care about. He turns his back on us to face Alistair once more, to which the boy stares at him, wide-eyed.
Come on, kitten. Let's give Glasses and his poor victim over there some privacy.
Oh, Emma, 100% bitter exes, in my mind at least. Grabbing my hand, Franz pulls me past the somewhat dumbfounded guard and out into the hall, closing the door behind us, and then Riv snatches his hand back and is all, "Don't hold my hand."
What in the...
Shh. Not yet.
With a surprisingly serious frown, Franz leads me down the hall in the direction of our adjacent rooms. A feeling of relief washes over me at being taken out of that situation, although there's so many new questions piling up on my plate that I don't know where to start. It's difficult to resist the urge to start asking Franz about what just happened, but his furtive demeanor makes me feel like I should hold my tongue for the moment. We approach the door to my room, and Franz nudges my shoulder expectantly.
Fine, fine.
Muttering under my breath, I fish out my key and unlock the door. Why can't we go to his room? He's certainly going to get the wrong idea from this, because that's what's important right now. Just accused of murder, but we can't let Franz get the wrong idea. Once we're inside, Franz closes the door behind us, flicking the lock before slowly turning back to face me. He exhales a soft sigh, shaking his head and rubbing a hand at the back of his neck. Soul cutie, nothing surprises me about the idea that Franz is easy.
I didn't think they'd strike so soon. At least I was in the right place at the right time.
I have this soft spot for Arden, all of you, but I think it's my soft spot and not Rivian's, because Rivian's so mean.
I'll say, I can't believe you thought to bring a guard with you outside.
At my surprised comment, Franz's eyes narrow in a smug, mischievous expression, and he tilts his head to one side.
Oh, that? That was a bluff, actually. I only watched you from the window.
Ah,
I have no alibi, but I doubted the glasses would take the time to press further.
but he's the Inquisitor. I have serious questions about how he rose to the role. I give him a stunned look. He was so completely confident, even while spouting out utter lies to Linnaeus. I don't think I'll ever be able to trust a word out of his mouth again. You never did. You never did. Although that aside, I suppose I owe him my gratitude for extracting me so effortlessly. Swallowing my pride for a moment, I let out an awkward cough and briefly avert my gaze.
Well, regardless, you have my thanks. Even if it was a bluff, it certainly saved me back there. But I think I deserve some kind of explanation for whatever the hell happened tonight. It seems like you're the only one who knows anything about it.
I think everybody knows a bit more than you, Riv, just saying. A roguish grin creeps over Franz's face at my words. Without immediately replying, he strolls over to the chair by the fireplace, lowering himself down into it, and languidly stretching out with his legs spread wide. Thanks for the details.
I wouldn't say you've done anything to deserve an explanation, but I'll give you one, just because I have a soft spot for you. Come over here.
No, tell me from over here, across the room. Don't do it, Riv. He motions for me to approach the chair, so I fold my arms over my chest and stroll up beside it, and offer no resistance at all.
That's completely unfair, you know. How am I supposed to defend myself if I...
Yup. Like a serpent lashing out at prey, Franz quickly reaches out and grabs my waist, pulling me down into his lap. I am somehow surprised by this, even though it is obviously what he wanted. Legs spread wide. Darmok, his arms wide. I feel a strong sense of deja vu as he tightly coils one arm around me, keeping me caged in this ridiculously humiliating position.
You really need to quit with this habit of yours, or one day I'll pull out a knife and stick your grabby hands with it.
No one believes that, Riv. Nobody.
Is that so? I don't think anyone's afraid of a kitten's claws, but I'd love to see you try.
I grit my teeth together and squirm out of principle for a few moments. That's what he wants you to do. But it's clear that I'm not going anywhere this time, either. So I give up and relax in his possessive grip instead. I swear, one of these days, when he's not looking...
Anyway, you said you wanted some explanation for what's going on, right? Well, here's something for you. The man who was killed, he was one of the ambassadors.
See, learning the information this way makes it more powerful, more potent.
What? One of the ambassadors?
When I repeat his statement in disbelief, Franz leans in to rest his chin on my shoulder, glancing at me from the side with amusement.
Are you piecing it together yet? Someone's trying to start a war, kitten. What better way to do it than to murder a visiting ambassador?
And as to why they want a war, well, the dead ambassador's country lost half its land 5 years ago to none other than your own kingdom. Let's not forget who was in charge of the armies at that time either.
You know, I think Riv's having a bit of a hard time taking this information in with all that's going on. He murmurs these words against my cheek, almost as if he's asking me a riddle, pausing to watch my reaction. Strangely enough, the question I want the answer to most is, how does Franz know so much? For that matter, who even is he? Who is this man? Whose man's is this? But those questions, as important as they are, surely aren't the key pieces on the board that's been set up. That's right, chess. Never forget, guys, chess.
Do you know who's behind this? With so many guests here, it'll be hard to pick them out. And they'll strike again before we get a chance to do anything.
Oh, they will, kitten. And I know that you're going to be their next target.
And I'll protect you? His response doesn't shock me as much as it did before, but I still feel the blood draining from my face at how confidently he purrs out these ominous words.
You're telling me that it's some crazy nationalist who wants to kill me because of my father's actions during the war?
Sounds legit. Let's take some action, but Riv's not ready for that. He suddenly lets out a low laugh at that, his soft exhalations tickling the side of my neck and making my skin break out in goosebumps. Never have I missed my prized personal space so dearly.
Oh, that's entirely possible. But I think the main reason is something a lot simpler. You were out in the gardens right before the murder, weren't you? That means you might have seen the culprit.
But I didn't. I only met up with Arden, and Arden's about as likely to murder someone as an eggplant.
You know, it's these kinds of low expectations. That's why Arden became a serial killer.
Ah, but the murderer doesn't know that, do they? For all they know, you're keeping quiet for your own safety, or planning some kind of blackmail. Those would be standard games in court affairs, after all.
Riv is not up for standard games in court affairs. We all know this. A growing sense of helplessness comes over me as Franz speaks. I want to say he's just making up things to scare me, but I remember now. Back in the gardens, I heard whisper. You forgot? When did you forget? I heard whispering, something that sent chills down my spine. It's been a week and I didn't forget. It's been like 10 minutes for you. Let them hear, and back inside. That's what they said. And if they were the ones involved with the murder, I'm sure they saw me, or heard my voice when Arden surprised me. In that case, they'd probably think I saw them too. Damn it all to hell.
Well, what do you suggest I do? Go and throw myself over the balcony to save everyone some time?
What? No one suggested that. No one was even close to suggesting that.
As romantic a death as that would be, I think I have a better solution.
He flicks his thumb in the direction of my bed, loosening his arm around my waist at the same time.
You can go to sleep, and I'll stay here to keep watch.
Mm-hmm.
You'd better hurry up before I start feeling the need to extract payment from you.
Oh no, but how will Riv sleep naked with nothing but a pillow?
Hang on a moment. You're telling me you're going to keep me safe until we find the assassin? Wouldn't it be a better choice to just arrange a carriage home?
That's not a choice. That's not a choice in this game. Not in chess. Franz quirks an eyebrow at me, the corners of his mouth teasingly curling upward.
What do you think that would achieve? It's the easiest thing in the world to find out where a noble family lives. And I'm sure your home isn't more tightly guarded than the castle. It's better to solve the problem than to run from it.
Yeah, maybe if you're not Riv.
So your best bet is to suss out the culprit here, get them behind bars, and live happily ever after. With my help, of course.
Okay, but how's my hair? No one at the party told me. I hesitate, reluctantly acknowledging the rationality in his words. Yes, rational, just like him standing over me, Twilight style. In my moment of pause, Franz reaches around my back, suddenly grabbing my rear with a firm squeeze.
And before you ask what I get out of it, besides being able to make you blush and squirm, let me just say I consider this repayment of a debt. That's all you need to know for now.
What is going on with Riv's father? I need details. Trying to keep myself from getting too flustered, I give Franz the most vitriolic glare I can muster and push myself onto my feet, backing away from him.
I swear, if you so much as breathe in my general direction during the night.
Wow, that's the most threatening you've ever sounded, but at the same time, that's not going to stop him from doing anything.
Don't worry yourself, kitten. I'd much rather you throw yourself into my arms than have to coerce you into them.
He waves a hand dismissively, offering me a suggestive, knowing wink, and I turn away with a sigh. Tonight I'll have to wear a nightgown. Can I really fall asleep with him here? Wouldn't it be a better idea to stay up? Ooh. Dun-dun-dun-dun. Stay up and flirt with Franz or try to go to sleep. What should we do? Biggest dilemmas. Late night dilemmas. I'm fine with either, but what do y'all want to do? Should we go to sleep? Sleep? Everybody just go to sleep. Go to sleep. All right. We're going to sleep. As insufferable as Franz is, I have to admit, I feel at least a little bit safer with another person in the room. Even if that person happens to be a total lecher. Rather than taking my clothes completely off, I decide it's a much more prudent decision to sleep in my underwear. So I keep them on as I slide under the covers, not taking my suspicious gaze off of Franz, who totally watched the whole thing. He was playing striptease music in his head the whole time. However, he seems to be lost in thought, prodding with the poker at the fireplace, while staring distantly into its crackling flames. If only I could figure out what's going on inside his head, and what his ultimate goal in doing all of this is. We all know. We all know what the ultimate goal of all of this chess is. Curling under the sheets, I drift off into an uneasy doze. Occasional noises from within the room make me jerk a little, but eventually my consciousness wanes to a deep darkness. Wake up. He's just... No. He's right next to us. I roll over hazily under the covers. Are those birds I hear outside? Ugh. Reluctantly, I pull my head out from the sheets, like a bear emerging from hibernation. Gentle sunlight streams in through the window, suggesting that morning's finally arrived.
Franz?
He bails. After rubbing my eyes, I glance around the room curiously. No one's here. It wasn't just a dream, right? Then my gaze falls upon a piece of paper lying at the foot of the bed. He left a note. Everybody leaves notes, except for Dominic. Actually, no. Rex, one of them didn't leave a note. I reach out to pick it up, squinting at the casually scrawled words. Don't go anywhere, kitten. Oh, really?
You can go gag on a pile of cocks, you complete bastard.
He wants that to be yours, so don't put any ideas into his head. I have seen the NC-17 concept art. I crumple up the note and toss it towards the wall. It was Dom, that non-note leaving. He really thinks I'm just going to wait around for him during the day? Well, he's wrong. Dead wrong. It's broad daylight out, and I can handle myself well enough. I don't need him to be my babysitter. Grumbling irritatedly under my breath, I slip out of bed and set about grooming and redressing myself, trying to process the events of the previous day in the meanwhile. I'm just gonna go out, accused of murder, walk around. So one of the ambassadors was assassinated, huh? How on earth are they gonna keep that a secret from the guests? And what about the other ambassadors? I wonder if this is Linnaeus's job to deal with. He did give me that strange look last night. Is it possible he caught on to what Franz was doing? Did he want to be the person to spend the night in my room?
This is all too much of a mess for me.
But at the same time, I can handle myself. Allegedly. Muttering to myself, I leave my room and head out into the hallway. The sound of chattering voices echoes up from downstairs, making me feel more at ease. I seriously doubt it can be that dangerous during the day. Most assassins wouldn't risk publicly attacking a target. Especially not in an isolated castle like this with nowhere to really run. What kind of incompetent assassins have you been dealing with? Heading down the corridor, I turn the corner while humming softly, keeping an eye out all the while. Is that a woman lying on the ground? I didn't do it. She looks unconscious. What on earth happened to her? I hurry over, quickly kneeling down beside her, getting my fingerprints on everything. She seems to be an older woman, dressed in exquisite finery, and why does she look so strangely familiar? She groans, her eyes struggling open. Now she looks even more familiar. Wait, hold on. She can't be...
Eh? Rivian, is that you?
Sounding just as in disbelief as I am, she pushes herself up into a sitting position, staring at me in shock.
Aunt Valora, I wasn't expecting to see you here. Especially not, you know, on the ground.
Your mother didn't mention a word about you coming to the celebration. I can't believe it.
I'm the family embarrassment. I'm not surprised. I let out a slightly nervous laugh. Ha! I didn't kill anybody, if that's what you heard. That's not really a surprise, considering Mother and Valora aren't exactly on the best of speaking terms, even though they're sisters.
More importantly, why are you on the floor? Did something happen?
I help Valora up to her feet, and she dusts herself off with disgruntled huff, turning her sharp gaze onto me.
Truth be told, I'm not completely sure. One moment I was on my feet, the next I was here on the ground. I think someone snuck up on me when I was leaving my room.
You're saying someone attacked you?
Rivian's all over this. When she nods irritatedly in agreement, I feel beads of cold sweat break out on the back of my neck. I turn back to go to my room and wait for Franz. So much for my theory of I'm completely safe in broad daylight.
I don't appear to be missing anything, so I'm quite baffled as to what their motive was. Regardless, I was on my way to the Inquisitor's chambers to be briefed on something that apparently happened last night. My vacation has been ruined already, it seems.
Ah, that's right. You're the King's main advisor on foreign affairs, aren't you?
Thanks for the exposition, Riv.
Yes, but if it weren't for the prestige and pay, you'd sooner catch me cleaning chamber pots than in this job. Tensions between us and our neighbors are at all-time highs, and things are only getting worse.
I tense slightly at her words. If she doesn't know about the ambassador's death yet, well, let's just say I don't want to be around when she finds out. Although, why wasn't she immediately informed last night? It seems like something the King's foreign advisor would need to know as soon as possible. Was it just negligence? Or did they want to get further in their investigation first? Deciding to spill the beans a little, I clear my throat with an awkward smile.
Well, regarding last night's incident, it was a murder, actually. Yours truly happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and I almost got detained as a suspect.
You're still a suspect. 100%. Valora's eyes widen, her lips parting as she inhales a gasp, but no gasp could be as dramatic as Riv's.
A murder? Oh, well, that's just delightful, isn't it? How did you get caught up in it? Sticking your nose in places it shouldn't be?
She squints at me a little suspiciously, and I can't help but shrink back a bit. Is she really thinking I'm involved with this?
No, I was just in the gardens around the same time the murder took place nearby, you see. I didn't hear so much as a scream. It's almost disappointing, really.
Yeah, this is where Linnaeus walks by and is like, what's disappointing?
You'd better watch yourself more carefully, you know. Being your father's son won't excuse you from everything.
So far, it's excused us from nothing. Ah, she thinks I used father's name to wiggle out of being held as a suspect, does she? Well, she always seemed to like him a lot more than she likes Mother. Maybe a little too much, actually. I think she holds him in higher esteem than she does the king himself. It's a coup. Riv's family's part of a coup.
Speaking of your father, do give him my regards when you get back home, won't you? It's a shame how little we talk after he retired.
He retired?
Yes, I'll try to remember to let him know. I'm sure he misses you too.
Actually, Father absolutely despises Valora. I feel like he's called her a slimy old witch more than a few times. Probably better not to tell her about that, though.
Of course, of course. Well, I'll be on my way to get the details of this whole murderous affair then, and let the Inquisitor know some attacker of defenseless women is running around on the loose. Do take care, Rivian.
Riv can't take care of himself, send help. I wiggle my fingers as she passes by, watching her elegant figure until it disappears around the corner. I swear, each time I talk to Valora, she looks at me like I'm some sort of unruly child. Because you are. That's the truth. Maybe I remind her of Mother too much. Or maybe she just gives everyone who isn't Father that look. Deciding it's my best in my best interest to not dilly-dally in the same spot Valora was knocked out, I quickly head to the main hall. I make it to the stairs without any further incident, which is far more of a relief than it really ought to be. On the balcony, a few servants are drifting around, with trays of light delicacies and pastries, and I take a few here and there to cobble together a casual breakfast. While I eat, my thoughts drift idly back to Franz, whose route I'm probably on. I wonder what he left my room to go do. Find clues, maybe. Or perhaps he's got another lord or lady he's trying to woo. Are you jealous? Is that what this is? Surely I can't be the only person he treats like that. I bet he plays around all the time, and just drops the object of his affections as soon as he gets bored. Look at this, that disappointed sigh. I shake my head moodily as I lean against the balcony. Well, it's not any of my business what he does. I just wish he'd stop pretending like I'm special, or like he knows me. It's damn distracting. As I silently gripe to myself while observing the well-dressed ladies and gentlemen stroll around below, a small tug comes at my sleeve. A little startled, I quickly glance over to my left. To my surprise, there stands Hazel, beaming up brightly at me.
Oh, hello, Hazel. What mischief are you trying to get yourself into today?
Why did you leave me?
That's not very nice. I just saw you come over here and wanted to give you back something you dropped.
What did I drop? What do you have? Her lips curl in a hurt pout, shoulders drooping slightly.
Ah, that was rather unnecessary of me, then. Sorry about that. Here, how about you take my pastry?
As if I'd flipped some magical switch, Hazel immediately brightens up, all but bouncing on her toes while giving me an eager nod. I hand her over the fluffy ice strudel I was originally very excited to eat, before that fit of brooding ruined my appetite. Oh, does it still? Hold on, that's a YouTube thing. There. Hazel at least looks like she'll enjoy it much more than I will. She starts happily munching away, a bit of icing getting on her cheeks, don't lie. You were going to enjoy that so thoroughly. so thoroughly.
What about this thing I dropped, though? I don't remember having anything in my pockets.
Yeah, please, tell me.
Here you go, sir. I saw someone put it in your pocket while you were walking around, but it fell out.
Who put it in my pocket? Give me more details. Blinking in surprise, I take the small folded piece of paper Hazel hands over to me, wiping off the crumbs that fell onto it. Someone put a piece of paper into my pocket. Well, it was a little crowded back by the stairs. Maybe I just thought someone bumped into me. I unfold it curiously, scanning over the contents. Meet me tonight alone. The storage room with the king's portrait. I have a warning for you. Who's that grunt? My heart skips a beat. There's no way. Was that the murderer?
Is something wrong, sir? You look a little funny.
Watching me with a concerned expression while chewing on the rest of the pastry, Hazel tilts her head curiously.
Ah, no, it's nothing. Just a bit of a strange message, that's all. You didn't happen to see the person who put this in my pocket, did you?
Rivian's getting played.
Hazel.
Before Hazel can respond to my nervous question, a woman suddenly comes hurrying up to the girl's side, bending down next to her with a slight gasp. She looks older than me, but not quite Silas's age. The lines on her forehead, however, imply a sort of stress and maturity beyond her years. What lines? Where are these lines at?
I told you not to eat sweets after breakfast. And what are you doing out here in the hall?
The woman, whose outfit suggests she's a maid, chides Hazel softly, while brushing off the icing on her cheek with one thumb.
But, Mom...
Quickly crumpling the paper in my hand and stuffing it in my pocket, I clear my throat and bow slightly to the maid.
That would be my responsibility, miss. She helped me out a great deal by returning something to me, so I gave her a little treat as a reward. I hope it's not too troubling for you.
The maid, Hazel's mother by the sound of it, looks up to me with widening eyes, then glances back to Hazel, who nods happily. Then she says, "He's a murderer, sweetie. Come this way."
Oh, I see. That's very kind of you, sir. Little Hazel gets into trouble more often than not, but I'm glad that she's doing something helpful now and then, too.
She offers me a relieved smile, although her eyes study my face with another, slightly sharper look. Calm down, lady. It's not my fault your little girl thinks I'm her older brother. Calm down, lady. Riv. Always the best.
I'm Emily, and Hazel here is my daughter. I'm very sorry if she's been bothering you at all. It's just exciting for her to be around so many people at once. I must say, it's a little overwhelming for me too.
I nod grimly, very much able to sympathize.
Yes, there's quite a great deal going on here, in more ways than one. I'm glad Hazel's enjoying things here, at least.
Don't you like parties, sir? There's so many pretty outfits and tasty food and lovely music. And the festival, too.
Riv only likes wine and sleeping in the nude. And murder, I add dryly in my head. I like sassy Riv. Sassy Riv is best Riv. Although, even without the murder, I feel like I'd still be more than ready to go home at this point.
You're quite right. Speaking of the festival, I think I'll go out and catch some fresh air. Thanks again for your help, Hazel.
You're welcome, sir. Make sure it doesn't fall out of your pockets again.
That sounded really menacing. I'm scared now. Hazel giggles mischievously, entirely unaware of how ominous a message she brought to me.
Oh, by the way, do you know where I might find the storage rooms? I, just thought I'd pass by them on my tour of the castle, you know.
Smooth. No one will suspect. My clumsy reasoning causes Emily to tilt her head curiously at me, her eyebrows knitting a little. See, Riv can handle himself, he told us so. A moment later, though, she offers me a slightly puzzled smile, nodding her head.
Yes, sir. They're on the main floor, down the east corridor. You'll find them if you head down the hall a little bit, I'm sure.
I inwardly breathe a sigh of relief, giving the maid a grateful nod. One day, I'll figure my way around these social blunderings, although it may not be this day.
Enjoy the rest of your morning then, sir. Come, Hazel. Let's go tidy the rooms upstairs.
Yes, Mum.
Feeling slightly guilty for going out to the festival while poor Hazel stuck inside, I offer the two a wave as we head off in different directions, then trot down to the main level. The note in my pocket is begging me to read it again, just to make sure I didn't mistake any of the words. However, I'm almost certain that it has to be tied to the murder case somehow, which, considering how close the message's deliverer got to me, is more than a little unsettling. If I can catch Hazel again, maybe I can ask her if she saw who it was. There might be a clue there as to the murderer's identity. But would the actual culprit really dare to approach me if they thought I'd recognize them? It seems like an obvious trap to go meet whoever delivered the note, and yet it might be the only way for me to figure out the orchestrator behind all this. I suppose I can put off the decision until the evening. It's gonna weigh on me until then, though. Is it, Riv? I don't believe. Oh, same festival people in the same places. Sighing to myself, I step through the castle doors into the outside, heading towards the chattering and energetic crowd surrounding the festival stalls. The weather's undeniably beautiful, and the cheerful atmosphere is enough to brighten even my sour mood. Riv was in a bad mood. Riv's emotions are a mystery to me. Still, to think that among this crowd, there could be a murderer. That's enough to ruin just about anyone's enjoyment, I think. How ignorance is bliss. Stopping at a crowded stall, I peer over the customers' heads to glimpse the vendors' wares. Ah, they're masks. That's right. I was going to get one for the masquerade ball. He's got quite the selection. Might as well treat myself while I'm here. I wind up buying a rather overpriced, but nonetheless magnificent mask. I doubt I'll be going to another masquerade anytime soon, because I'll be dead. So I might as well make this one count. Tucking the mask into my coat, I turn around and start wandering towards another stall. Suddenly, I see a familiar figure approaching me quickly through the crowd. Roguish features, dark hair, a muscular build. There's no mistaking it. I instantly turn around and try to push my way through the throng of people to escape, gritting my teeth together. Damn it, he's not the person I want to see right now.
I thought I said not to start running around, kitten. What am I going to do with you?
A hand swiftly catches my wrist, and before I can try to pull away, Franz tugs me back towards him.
You'll kindly remember I'm not under some kind of house arrest. Besides, what are you out here for? So much for trying to figure out who the assassin was?
He's doing more than you. What did you do this morning besides eat pastries and get a note? I mutter irritatedly at Franz as he lets out a chuckle, rubbing his free hand along one side of his stubbled face while shaking his head.
Calm down, calm down. Let's not go saying words like assassin in crowds. But before you start giving me that hurtful stare, you should know I've been looking around for information, not having a fun day playing at the festival.
Unlike you, Mr. Expensive Overpriced Mask.
But now that you're here, and I figured we would wander out eventually, we can do some exploration together. Our first couple's outing.
This is like, it's just so inevitable. Like, I agree with Soul. Like, there's no way I could mess this up. Watch me mess it up anyway. With a dreamy sigh, Franz starts to lead me through the crowd, his hand slipping down from my arm to thread his long fingers between my own. My goodness. A sense of defeat sweeps over me, and I follow him along, somewhat reluctantly. What annoys me most, though, is how at ease I feel now that he's back at my side. It's not like you can really blame me. He's so tall, and he has the build of someone who can easily wield a blade or win in hand-to-hand combat. Well, Franz's physique isn't any of my business, but if he's so insistent on being my de facto bodyguard, it's important that he's not flimsy.
Where are we going? Are you going to win me a prize at one of the booths?
The hope in that voice. He's like, please, win me a giant teddy bear. I glance up at him as we stroll along, feeling slightly self-conscious about our conspicuous hand-holding. Arden is gonna cry. Arden's gonna see this and cry. Even if I protest, he'll probably come up with some ridiculous excuse like, I don't want you running off again. Well, there are worse things to deal with, I suppose.
I thought we'd go see the fights. But if Our culprit is actually hiding in plain sight, and is blending in as one of the jousters or brawlers. Assassins have to be good fighters, you know.
Naughty, I'd like to. It just depends on how much time I have, because I think this game is quite
Don't
long.
be ridiculous. He'd have to be a madman to try something like that. Now, some of these vendors, they're rather shady.
Is your head screwed on properly, kitten? What kind of vegetable peddler moonlights as an assassin? Death by rotten produce?
Look, Rivian's trying. He's very new at this. We continue bickering about the murderer's hidden identity as we walk along, our conversation turning into a contest of who can come up with the most ridiculous theory. The atmosphere is probably far too light for the gravity of the situation, especially considering how grave a danger Franz led me into thinking I was in yesterday. But it's difficult to stay on edge while we stroll among the lively festival grounds, trading quips, and for the first time since I arrived in this place, I find myself surprisingly at ease. Franz too seems more relaxed than his usual aggressively lewd self, and he almost looks rather innocent as he admires the wealth of exotic goods and fanciful wares on display around us. I notice, however, that his gaze frequently flicks around, keeping a watchful eye on our surroundings.
Oi, Franz. I was wondering, have you... Hold on a moment, is that the boy from yesterday?
Just as I interrupt our banter to ask Franz a question, my eyes are suddenly drawn to a familiar face in the crowd. Alistair, wasn't that his name?
Oh, that one. I'm surprised old Glasses still doesn't have him trapped in his room. Who knows what ungodly things he's probably doing to the poor boy.
See, the nickname of Glasses is really fueling the bitter X theory. I shoot Franz a flat look at his mockingly sympathetic words before glancing back over to the young man, who's slouching by one of the vendors selling savory foods. He meets my gaze a moment later and abruptly bolts upright to stare at me like a startled deer. Oh, he probably thinks I have it out for him because he tangled me up in the whole mess with Linnaeus. Well, I'm not happy about it, but it really wasn't his fault.
Let's go talk to him. He might have some important clues, don't you think?
It's possible, if you can keep him from scampering away first. Give him a friendly smile and wink, why don't you? That constant glare of yours doesn't excite everyone as much as it does me, you know.
You see, I was missing Franz's thirst. I was wondering if he was okay, but now I know he's fine. Attempting to follow Franz's advice while ignoring his comment, I awkwardly waggle my fingers at Alistair. I can imagine the wave. Hey. He freezes for a moment, gaping at us with a petrified expression, before finally raising a trembling hand to return the gesture. I decide to seize the opportunity and tug Franz over in Alistair's direction. They're still holding hands, approaching him a little cautiously so that he doesn't decide to bolt. It's like dealing with a feral cat or something, I swear. When we get closer, I see that he's holding some half-eaten delicacy on a stick, nervously chewing what's probably some of the other half. Franz and I come to a halt a little distance away from him, and a few moments of awkward silence stretch between us. Then, clearing my throat, I attempt to fill the uncomfortable pause with the most cheerful voice I can muster, which is to say, not very.
Well, enjoying the festival, Good thing you aren't still caught up in all that awful business from last night, eh?
Rivian trying to be social is so awkward constantly. So about that murder last night, am I right? He winces a little when I bring up yesterday's incident. Ugh, I probably should have waited to mention that until later. Another sublime display of socialization, Rivian.
Yes, sir. Truth be told, I'm here to avoid someone.
Alistair swallows, his eyes dropping down to his feet.
Avoid someone? Is Sir Four Eyes stalking you or something?
Sir Four Eyes, yes. He's a ponytailed hell beast, how dare you. Franz's tone sounds somewhat more direct than I was expecting, as if he's impatient with Alistair's tentative way of speaking. Wasn't he the one who told me to be more friendly?
No. It's my guardian. She's going to be in a very bad mood today, I think.
After all that murder. He anxiously fiddles with the street food he's holding, looking rather unhappy. I have to say, if his meek way of speech wasn't so annoying, he'd almost be cute, in a mousy sort of way.
I see. That's quite a shame. Well, we won't bother you too long, but I wanted to ask you a little more about last night, if you don't mind.
Tell us more about this murder. Trying to work my way rather unsubtly back to the main point, I offer him an encouraging nod in an attempt to sound a little less aggressive. He shifts a bit uneasily, but doesn't seem as completely closed off as when I first brought it up, so I decide to take the plunge.
About who you saw going into the gardens, besides me, obviously, was there anyone else? People who seemed suspicious or out of the ordinary?
I mean, I know I seemed really suspicious, but other people. As I watch him intently, Alistair visibly hesitates, averting his gaze for a moment. Is he hiding something? Or is this just his normal anxious attitude? I can't tell. Damn it!
Well, Rivian asked you a question, didn't he? Did you see someone suspicious or didn't you? Or, no, surely you're not protecting someone.
No. It's not like that, I swear, sir. I really can't say anything. You have to believe me.
Franz's accusation makes Alistair suddenly tense up, the stick of food dropping from his hand as he takes a hasty step backwards. Grinding my teeth quietly, I elbow Franz in the side, letting out a pointed cough.
No, we're not trying to accuse you of anything. Really, can't we just have a little chat about
Murder?
It wasn't her. There's no way. Sorry, gotta go.
Before I can so much as get another word out, the wide-eyed Alistair returns on his heel and dashes into the crowd at top speed. I stare in disbelief at his diminishing figure until it disappears into the throng of people. Damn, he's surprisingly fast for someone so small.
So, was that really necessary? If you had been any more direct with him, he probably would have soiled himself on the spot.
Turning to glare up at Franz, I fold my arms over my chest, expecting a sheepish reaction. But instead, he just smirks slyly back at me, lifting his shoulders in an innocent shrug.
Really? I thought it was quite effective. After all, he was so flustered that he practically blurted out who he was trying to protect. Her, is it?
I suppose so. If you hadn't scared him off, we might have gotten a name. The fact that it's a girl doesn't narrow it down a whole lot, does it?
Actually, this is a BL dating sim, so it narrows it down considerably. Franz doesn't appear the slightest bit remorseful, or even mildly apologetic, so I decide to save my breath, chastising him and just shake my head.
I think not everything here is what it seems to be, kitten. Let's not forget that we're all playing parts in a much larger game. And sometimes, if you don't attack your opponent while you can, you never get the chance to again.
Sometimes, Riv, you can only move diagonally. Also, are you guys writing a crossover fic in the chat? Because I'm into it. Rather than elaborating on his statement, he instead reaches out a finger towards my neck. Tracing the tip horizontally along my throat, the gesture slow enough to be as much dangerous as it is suggestive. Mr. Shipper walked back in at the right time.
Right now, your position's better than you think it is. After all, our enemy believes you have a clue as to who they are. Shh. We just have to use that to our advantage.
There's murder and flirting. How dare you interrupt? It's okay. It's a slow burn. The fact that Franz refers to all of this so casually as a game is more unsettling than it is reassuring. Sure, I love a good one-on-one every now and then, but not when the stakes are my life. Is this truly what being in court is like? He acts as if it's a normal occurrence.
Well, I sure dampened the mood, didn't I? Don't look so pale. I like you better when you're blushing. Come on, let's continue over to the games.
Fine, fine.
Still feeling slightly sobered, I follow Franz back out into the main crowd, which seems even larger now that it's around midday. Our back and forth chatter is a little less lively, mostly on my end, as we make our way towards the sandy-floored arena that's encircled by a thick throng of people. Judging from the loud cheers, some kind of fight is going on currently. I've always found combat sports to be a little barbaric, and rather hypocritical for nobles so enthralled with genteel manners. Maybe it's an outlet for their human aggression. Riv is here to judge, and only judge. As Franz and I push our way to the side of the ring, my eyes fall on the two men taking wide punches at each other in a sort of hand-to-hand brawl.
Who's that fiery head one? He's positively giant.
Him. He's one of the king's favorites, I think. Doesn't take much to see why. He's built like a brick house.
Now that song will be in my head for the rest of the night. Thanks, Franz. Franz pauses, casting me a somewhat sharp glance from the corner of his eye that says, "You better not like him more than me, or else."
I hope you're not getting any funny thoughts. He's twice your size, you know. He'd impale you from one end to the other.
How about you just shut up? My head isn't constantly filled with vulgarity, unlike someone I know.
It's too full of judgment. Chuckling smugly, Franz ruffles a hand through my hair, destroying the work I spent on my neatly and painstakingly groomed locks. Well, we're pretty much married at this point. We all know what hair touching means in these games. I purse my lips together and bear the indignity of it, deciding to focus on the two men beating each other up instead.
Do you really believe any of these brawlers could be our assassin? They seem a little too much on the burly side to not be noticed.
You don't notice anything. Someone put a note in your pocket.
I think you're right. That boy would have probably called out one of them as the culprit if he'd seen them going into the gardens. A more obvious murderer than one with biceps the size of watermelons.
Franz is really focused on how big their
Well,
biceps are.
He thought I was the suspect. So you should take his observations with a grain of salt, you know.
You're plenty suspicious. I'm sure a lot of people interpret your awkwardness as trying to hide something.
Disgruntled noise. A sour expression overtakes my face, but it's difficult to argue with Franz's point. Well, it's not my fault I'm not used to talking to so many people. Is a bit of social fumbling all it takes to be thought of as shady? Yes, actually, 100%. 100% it is. Father hates being around crowds as much as I do. Maybe he's just so brutally direct that it comes off as straightforwardness, rather than acting suspicious. Ugh, I'm not desperate enough to take a page out of his book yet. Maybe I'll hire an etiquette tutor when I get back home. I fall into my musings and practically zone out for the rest of the fight, which continues on for a little while longer. Only when the ginger-haired man squarely knocks out his opponent does the crowd erupt into cheers, and he victoriously strides out of the ring with his hands raised.
I could have seen that one coming. Let's ask him if he might know of anyone suspicious.
Let's ask it just like that.
Oh, so watermelon arms. Why not, I suppose?
We step our way through the throng of people, which steadily grows thinner now that there's a break between fights. The tall brawler is getting the blood wiped off his cheek by a clearly flustered young woman. He is Sir Watermelon Arms after all, who is probably more than a little intimidated by how his hands are the size of her head. He turns to us, however, when we approach, eyeing Franz for a long few moments, before his gaze flicks down to me dubiously. Why, hello there.
There's something you lads been eating. I dunna take kindly to just being gawped at.
It's everything I needed. It's everything I didn't know I needed until right now. His thickly accented voice bellows out, deep and loud enough that it seems like it could potentially shake the ground if he were shouting. I swallow my nervousness and attempt to come up with some sort of placating remark, before I get the chance, Franz suddenly clears his throat. I know, Jim.
Have you seen anything out of the ordinary around the castle by chance? We're looking into a little mishap that occurred recently.
Yeah, I know, Adrian, I know that he's the quote-unquote secret. I shoot him a sidelong glance. He'd better not mess things up again like he did with Alistair. I have a feeling the results would be a lot worse with this brute, too. Alright, and getting smashed into a Rivian-shaped bloodstain on the ground isn't on my list of plans for today. But it really should be, because we're totally going to meet that person in the closet later.
Out of the ordinary. I've no clue what you damn nobles think's ordinary. But...
He pauses, scratching ponderously at his cheek, a bawdy grin rising to his lips soon after.
Yeah, now that you're mentioning it, I do remember seeing one of the maids scurrying around all anxious like inside the castle last evening, when I was paying a visit to her.
The chat is already an admirer. Yes, Artemis, that's what it's supposed to be at least. It's getting there partially.
I didn't think much of it due to be distracted, but I remember the lass had a pretty face, with big brown eyes and darkish hair on her shoulders. Looked plenty nervous though.
Franz's eyebrows knit together at the man's description, and he flicks his gaze thoughtfully to one side. Big brown eyes and dark hair around her shoulders. Doesn't that sound a little like Hazel's mother? Not really. Her hair is magenta.
She was on the floor with the guest rooms then. Did you see if she was carrying anything?
Well, I weren't staring at her hands, but I reckon she had some sort of large cloth bundle. Something valuable, most likely. Yeah, she seemed awfully shaky for just now.
The brawler raises his mountain-like shoulders in a shrug. Just Franz looks like... I can't even describe that expression. He seems to be watching us a bit curiously, or maybe suspiciously. Perhaps we shouldn't attract any more undue attention by asking people such forthright questions. After all, we don't know who might be working against us.
I see. Well, you've been very helpful, sir. Congratulations on your victory.
Now get out of here before people want you to be with Riv instead of me. Brisk but cordial, Franz offers a nod of thanks, to which the large fighter lets out a snort.
You're speaking as if it were an even match. Can't expect you lot to know about real fighting anyways.
Well, definitely not Riv. 100% not Riv. He mutters to himself in an irritated tone and turns away from us, shaking his head disparagingly. Franz, however, seems to have already moved on, and he beckons for me to follow him back into the crowd. I glance between him and the dismissive brawler's back, debating on whether it's worth trying to pry any more answers out of him. But I have a feeling we've overstayed our welcome, and Franz looks a little impatient. Sighing, I return to Franz's side, mulling over this new clue. A nervous feeling curls in the pit of my stomach when I compare the fighter's description of the maid to the woman I met earlier.
Excuse me?
No. No more summoning. A tall guard irritatedly elbows his way past us, and I realize with some embarrassment that we're standing in the middle of the busy path. I grab Franz's wrist and tug him a little bit out of the way, offering an apologetic nod to the guard as he shuffles past. We had to tug Franz. He must be really out of it.
What do you think about all this then, Franz? Franz?
When an immediate reply doesn't come, I inquisitively glance over to the tall man, who seems to be lost in thought. His eyes are focused in the distance, towards the same direction that the annoying guard stalked off in. Jack. 100% Jack. Go for it. I nudge his side impatiently, and he blinks for a moment before directing his emerald gaze down at me.
Ah, kitten. As much as it pains me, I believe I'll need to leave your side for a little while. Can you stay out of trouble until I'm back?
No, 100% not. Where are you going? Take me with you.
Fine, whatever you wish. I suppose I'll see you when I see you.
Oh, Emma, I like the subtlety of that. I like it. His response surprises me a little, so my words come out sounding somewhat surly, because you know you don't want to leave. Franz pauses, lips curled in a devilish smirk.
Has parting become a sweet sorrow? You don't seem as keen on getting rid of me this time.
You're just my bodyguard, you know. Don't go getting a swell head.
You pulled him out of the way by the wrist. You're practically married. He touched your hair. My flustered reply elicits a chuckle from Franz, who lowers himself in a bow. A moment later, he slips off into the crowd, I'm reading the chat, and I lose sight of his broad back in the sea of people. Where is he going off to so suddenly anyway? He seemed fairly distracted. Did some kind of idea pop into his head? Feeling a little disheartened, I slowly make my way back to the castle, shoving my hands moodily into my pockets. The afternoon sun beats down on me heavily, helping to sap away my previous energy and enthusiasm. Emma! It's hard to shake a sense of frustration from having all these pieces that don't fit together, too. And I have no idea who my opponent is, even though I sense some of the moves they're making. No, more importantly, do I even have an opponent? I've only been going off Franz's word that I'm being targeted. Maybe I'm just deluding myself into a sense of danger when nothing's really there. Stop grunting. But there is that note that Hazel gave me earlier. I forgot to ask Franz what he thought about it, but perhaps it's better I didn't. It is 100% not better that you didn't. It's probably related to what happened before, though I doubt it could be from the murderer. It seems like too blatant of a trap. Damn it. This is too confusing. I gloomily push my way through the castle doors and into the main hall, intent on returning to my room's solitude for at least a little while. Social gatherings are bad enough, without all this deadly intrigue layered on top. No, the intrigue makes it better. The deadly intrigue is why we're here.
Ah, sir. May I speak with you for a moment?
Hi, Silas. I turn to see Silas approaching me from one side of the hall, his long strides carrying him forward quickly.
Hello, Silas. What is your fastidious self up to this fine afternoon?
Silas's brows crease slightly, his expression indicating some degree of concern.
Lady Valora came to me just a few minutes ago, seeming quite distressed. She asked to speak with you, but as I did not know your whereabouts, I directed her to your room instead. I'm afraid I opened it using the servant's spare key. I hope it was not too invasive of your privacy, but Lady Valora was very distraught indeed.
Servant's spare key. You heard it here first. Oh, lovely. I suppose Linnaeus gave her the briefing. Talk about a nightmare vacation. I almost feel sorry for her.
Well, as long as you didn't rummage through my underwear drawer, I think I can excuse your invasion of my room.
You know, why do you have to harass Silas like this constantly? He's just trying to do his job and you're opening doors naked and all kinds of stuff.
That seems like an action more befitting of Sir Chaumont, if I may say so, sir.
I give Silas a puzzled look at the mention of an unfamiliar name, and he blinks at me curiously.
Sir Franz Chaumont, the nephew of the Peruvian king. I had noticed him following you closely since you arrived, despite his tendency to keep a low profile.
Sir Franz Chaumont. He has a name? I stare blankly at Silas with my jaw agape. Could our union unite our kingdoms? Franz is part of A royal family?
Ah, I beg your pardon, sir. I only remember his identity due to my age. He made frequent visits to our kingdom along with the Peruvian ambassador, you see.
I shouldn't pry. I want all the information. Prying all the time. I can't constrain my curiosity any longer. I want to learn the truth behind Franz's secretive past, even if it comes back to bite me later. I don't know what it could possibly achieve, but if he's going to insist on sticking to me through this whole celebration, I have a right to be interested in his motives, don't I?
Silas, this is important. What else do you know about Franz? Why he's here, who he's with, his friends, his enemies?
Does he like long walks on the beach? Tell me. The butler looks a little taken aback at my not-so-subtle questioning, but his eyes soon glimmer with a sly light.
I am not privy to Sir Chaumont's secrets, I'm afraid, sir. He seems quite taken with you, however. So perhaps you may have some luck asking him yourself.
Henry, I think it's the latter of the two things you proposed. I silently grip my teeth together in frustration. Silas has to know more than just that. Is he not telling me I have consideration for Franz's privacy?
However, he has also shown a great interest towards the young lady Celeste. He has consistently eyed her since the celebration started, I believe.
Celeste, trapping more men with her thighs. Don't start Riv up again. The perceptive, or maybe just nosy butler, chuckles a little to himself, shaking his head.
Celeste, is it? I see.
He's gonna go to his room and cry. A strange, uncomfortable annoyance tightens in my stomach when I hear Silas's words. I have to remember Franz's playboy appearance isn't just an act. But why does he keep following me around then? Does he think I'll eventually give in to him just because he's tall and charismatic? Tell us how you really feel, Riv. Well, he's completely out of his mind. I refuse to waste my time on someone like that, regardless of whether he thinks he has my best interests at heart. I wouldn't be surprised if he's been stringing me along with lies all this time, just for amusement's sake. To be quite honest, way to take it from 0 to 100. He just said that he looked at her.
Your face has grown rather flushed, sir. Do you require a visit to the infirmary?
No, he needs a chill pill.
No, nothing like that. I'm fine. I'll be going to my room now, I think. But thanks for your help, Silas.
Of course, sir. Should you need anything, please do not hesitate to request my services.
Remember, I have a spare key. I offer a slow nod to the butler before turning towards the stairs, closing my eyes with a long exhale. I hardly know what to think anymore. I'm too jealous to see straight. Father, how on earth did you survive playing games like these for 30 years? All this information, misinformation, and conspiracies. We've learned like 2 things. It's as if I'm a pawn on a board where I can't see more than 1 step ahead.
Maybe I should give up the aristocracy and become a monk instead.
Mumbling to myself, I return to my room with heavy steps, all but dragging my feet as I head down the corridor. He's full on doing the sad Charlie Brown walk. On my way, I pass by a happily chattering couple, probably on their way down to the festival.
I can't wait until the masquerade ball. Are you going to romance me like a mysterious stranger, Gerard?
Of course, love. Even in a sea of masks, I have eyes only for you.
I need the main character to be that guy now. I cast the cooing pair a sour glance, but they're too enraptured with each other to even notice me. No one is allowed to love but Riv. Disgusting lovebirds. I bet he's probably cheating on the girl with her sister or something. Oh my gosh, Riv. Fishing out my key, I unlock my door and step inside, about to let out a heavy sigh of relief, because I can't remember anything and I forgot my aunt was there.
Rivian, why in the god's name did you not tell me about this last night?
Ah, I forgot about my uninvited guest. I suppose I should have known she'd be a bit testy over me not giving her all the details earlier. Valora, who had been primly sitting in the chair by the fireplace, quickly pushes up her feet and storms over to me.
Apologies, Aunt Valora. I wasn't sure if the Inquisitor was alright with me leaking any sensitive information, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Leaking? You know as well as I do that I was to be informed regardless. I've been running around trying to patch up this crisis all morning while you were out goofing around.
I still haven't recovered from bitter Riv in the hallway. Well, that's just not fair, is it? She's the one who's the foreign advisor. What the hell do I have to do with it?
Actually, I was looking into more details about the murder for my own, private investigation, so to speak.
Oh, really? Well, what did you find out? The King's men are investigating as well, but if no culprit is discovered, things will surely end in a crisis.
I can't help but blink a little at her serious questioning. I was expecting her to blow off my investigation. I like that even he puts it in quotes, considering how unqualified I am. But maybe she has enough faith in Father to extend me a little as well. Although I can't help but wonder if that's more of a bad thing than a good one. It's probably bad. It's probably very bad.
Not a great deal, unfortunately. I did glean that one of the witnesses is trying to protect some woman, and one of the maids was seen acting suspiciously close to the time of the murder, however.
One of the maids, are you sure about that? I'll have them rounded up and questioned immediately.
Wow, Riv, you're really bad at this.
Wait, let's not be too hasty. Could I not question the girl myself a bit first? I don't think we should rush to conclusions, you know.
Valora gives me a flat, stern glare, her eyes filled with a skeptical glint.
This is a diplomatic disaster, Rivian. If a culprit is not found and punished, we will never be able to repair relations with Proevia.
Oh, I see. That deserved that grunt. Did she just say the ambassador was from Proevia? No wonder Franz has been so invested in all of this. As part of the Proevian royal family.
More importantly, I suspect something very sinister is at work here. This incident reminds me of something that happened years ago. Something that involved a group intent on plunging the continent into chaos.
The chilliness in Valora's eyes almost makes me shiver. She looks deadly serious, and I sense an ominous undercurrent in her words. You mean like undercurrent, overcurrent?
An underground cult known as the Disciples of Ignatius has been plaguing our government for some time now. They work to destabilize authority, and though we don't know what their true aim is, they are dangerously skilled at what they do.
You think one of their members killed the ambassador then? Do you think they'll try to strike again?
Her lips press together tightly, and she lowers her voice a little.
I suspect they will. And for your own sake, you had best stop interacting with foreigners at this gathering any more than necessary. We can barely trust those inside our own borders at present, and anything you do may be turned against you.
Look, I'm already in too deep with Franz to follow any of that advice. I swallow, averting my gaze a little uneasily. Now that I think about it, Linnaeus probably complained to her about Franz's appearance last night, and I'm sure she knows who he is. Valora watches me keenly for a moment, and somehow I glimpse the same determination in her expression that I've seen so often on Father's face. Soon, though, she sighs and smooths out her clothes a little, taking a few steps towards the door.
Now I'm going to see about this questioning of the maids. We are sorely lacking in evidence, so I intend to hunt down every bloody clue that I can find. Inform Linnaeus should anything else come to light, Rivian. And make sure not to blemish your father's name by getting caught up in anything else unsavory. The last thing your family needs is a scandal.
Rivian promises nothing. With that flippant comment, the old woman offers a sigh before leaving my room, slamming the door behind her.
Old bat.
Oof. With a mixture of anxiety and anger, I fold my arms over my chest and pace around the chamber. Franz. Could he really be involved in this in a deeper way than I know of? You know nothing, so of course he is. Anything he's doing is deeper than you know. I'm starting to wonder what else he hasn't told me. And if he knows of these disciples, or if he could even be one of them. After making sure my door is locked, I head over to the bed and lower myself down to sit on the edge, fishing out the piece of paper from my pocket. I hesitate for a moment, but finally unfold it to scan over the contents once more, swallowing the foreboding feeling in my throat. Meet me tonight, alone. I have a warning for you. Despite how clearly dangerous this is, I just can't shake the feeling that it's something more than a trap. If someone had really wanted me dead, surely they could have slipped poison into my tea this morning, since apparently I didn't notice them sneaking up behind me. More importantly, meeting this person seems like the only way I can get any answers, or at least a clue as to what's going on. Maybe I can ask Silas to wait nearby or something, just for safety's sake. Unless you're meeting Silas. I'd ask Franz, except, well, his familiar manner pushed down my guard more than it should have. I think I've been trusting him far too much. Besides, there's probably some truth to what my crone of an aunt was saying. He may be planning to betray me when it's most convenient.
Oh, stupid games.
Time to get naked for sleep. With a yawn, I fall back on the bed, stretching my arms out as I sink into the fluffy duvet. The early evening sun lazily gleams in through the window, just bright enough to make me feel comfortably warm. My eyes flutter closed, and in the blackness that follows, images from today and last night replay themselves. Blemish my father's name. Ha! I'll find this culprit, and I'll show Valora and Father that I can live in this cutthroat world as well as they can. Okay. Sure, Jen. And then I'll take a nice, long nap. So chilly. Where's the blanket? My eyes still closed. I fumble around for the covers hazily. Wait a moment. I'm not under any blankets. Where are my damn blankets? I abruptly force myself upright, glancing around in confusion. Outside my window, the sky is dark. Bloody hell, I must have fallen asleep after I came back from the festival.
Shit.
You had to do one thing. You had to go with this trap. Come on, let's do this. Pushing off the bed, I hastily smooth my clothes and hair out, shaking my head to clear the residual drowsiness. I hope I'm not too late for that meeting. To be fair, they did say tonight, without any indication of time, so they'd better still be there. If they're not there to carry out the trap and I still came, that's Rivian's thought process.
God bless my narcoleptic soul.
Alright, let's do this. Sneaking. After making sure I look at least mostly presentable, because that's what's important, making sure his hair is on point, I slip out into the corridor, closing my door behind me with a soft click. It's almost eerily quiet, leading me to believe most everyone's already retired to their rooms. I've been so used to hearing the corridors filled with chatter, streaming in from the main hall, that the silence makes me a little uneasy. My footsteps echo back to me in an ominous rhythm, and I start to unthinkingly hold my breath as I walk along.
Someone's up late. Heading to a midnight meeting with your secret lover.
And already, you're terrible at this. The voice of a girl passing by makes me nearly jump out of my skin. I can't even see where she is in the thick of darkness, but the voice doesn't resemble anyone I know. She seems to be chewing on something though, And it smells like one of those delicious cakes I had at the festival earlier.
Are you going to play with some mysterious man? You should be careful. Everyone has so many hidden secrets.
Yes, well, have a pleasant evening.
Off to my tryst. See you later. With a flustered bow to the unseen maiden, I turn and sprint in the opposite direction, clenching my teeth together. Probably just some drunk noble girl returning to her room, but being reminded of secrets makes my mood immediately darken. Franz is probably keeping more secrets from me than I can count. Before long, I arrive at the grand staircase leading into the main hall. This place, too, is completely silent and pervaded by a thick darkness, to the point where it's practically unrecognizable from its glowing beauty during the day. I know it's silly to be put so on edge by the different atmosphere, but I am ruffled enough for this whole walk into a potential trap business that I think I'm allowed to be a bit of a scaredy cat.
Any ghosts listening, speak now or forever hold your peace.
Tell me how my hair looks. Goosebumps break out on my skin as I descend the stairs and trot towards the side corridor Emily told me about earlier, glancing over my shoulder now and then at the various noises of the night. Let's just hope no one follows me down here. I'm not sure what'd be worse, being shanked in the back or being called out for acting like a boy without his teddy bear. Shanked. Definitely shanked. 100% worse. Inside the dark hall, I wind my way past various rooms, all of them clearly more functional and less ornate than the guest chambers upstairs. I peek into a number of them to try and spot the portrait that was mentioned in the note, but I can't seem to find it. I huff to myself and anxiously comb through more and more of the seemingly endless rooms, losing my way for a good few minutes. A good sense of direction never was one of my strong suits. Couldn't they have at least drawn me a map on the back of this damn note? Why did they assume I was confident?
Is this the place?
At least while walking past while walking past an open door, I notice a large and eye-catching painting inside the room. The pompous crown certainly gives it away, so this must be the one. Holding my breath, I tentatively step into the chamber, my eyes darting around to catch any trace of movement. It seems surprisingly empty, however, save for a plethora of crates and boxes.
Hello? Anyone else here for a late-night rendezvous?
Oh, yes. That's how to start every secret meeting. Oh, hello there. When no reply immediately comes, my heart falls in my chest. Am I too late? Did I miss my chance to finally glean some information?
Oh, you're here.
I unconsciously yelp and jump around to face the source of the voice, which stems from a shadowy corner. My gaze falls on a slender girl sitting on the ground, who pushes herself up to her feet as she watches me with a frown.
Celeste? You wrote this note?
Of course I did. Next time, though, could you not make me wait further, please? I fell asleep on the cold floor, you know.
As if her comment was expected to inspire some deep sympathy or guilt inside me, Celeste pouts, shivering theatrically. If she thinks she can out-theatric Rivian, she's dead wrong.
Well, bring a blanket next time then, and be more specific with your cryptic notes.
Yup. Rivian will not be out-dramatic. I can't help but feel a little disappointed and annoyed. This girl, surely she can't have any real information about what's going on. We only met briefly, but she seemed a bit, well, airheaded. Why are you like this, Riv?
How horrible you are. And here I was, trying to help you. I only met you once, but you made my heart flutter enough that I wanted to warn you.
Warn me? Warn me about what exactly? The upcoming fashion trends or latest hairstyles, perhaps?
Where is this coming from? Where is this? What did she do to you? Celeste sighs heavily, shaking her head. Then after hesitating a moment, she steps a little closer, motioning for me to lean down. Yeah, Adam, I think that's what it is. I reluctantly comply, tilting my head to let her quietly speak into my ear, and she says, "You're a jerk."
I didn't tell you this before, but my father's an ambassador, you know. He knows lots about what's happening, especially because he's good friends with your Inquisitor.
I blink my nose, wrinkling a little at the mention of Linnaeus. More importantly, though, does that mean Celeste is aware of what happened yesterday?
My father survived several sabotage attempts from a cult called the Disciples of Ignatius. And he thinks they killed the Peruvian ambassador to stop the alliance talks going on.
Alliance talks? Don't tell me there's been some sort of secret meeting going on behind all this.
Of course, Papa said the party was a ruse to get ambassadors and nobles from a few countries together to feel out a partnership. Through now, obviously. Matters do tend to do that.
Here he is all like, what, you care about hairstyles? And she knows like 10 times more than him about everything. Now that I think about it, what Celeste says makes sense. It's not a coincidence then that people with important positions like Linnaeus and Valora are here. Speaking of Valora, she must have known about the talks, not to mention the purpose of the whole party. I wonder what her role is in all of this.
I'm still confused as to how you're involved, though. Do you just eavesdrop on your father's business all day?
You should try it. She's way better informed than you. She's not about to get murdered. Celeste gives me a hurt look for a moment, but then her expression turns a little serious.
Actually, I saw the murderers last night.
I stare at her intently, trying to see if she's playing around or obviously lying, but the girl seems completely honest.
I was walking out for a bit of fresh air after dinner, and suddenly I spotted two figures crouching in the bushes. I couldn't make out who they were, only that one was big and wearing something unusually bulky, and the other was much smaller. I didn't notice anything, thankfully, because they were talking to each other. I saw you too, walking on the other side of the bushes. Didn't you hear them at all?
I can feel the blood draining from my face a little as Celeste recounts her story. Those people whispering, I did hear them right before I encountered Arden, didn't I?
But how'd you know they were murderers? Some shady whispers don't mean they're criminals.
Well, when I started suspecting that something was happening, I hid in the bushes myself. That was when the ambassador came outside. He must have been tricked by one of them because he was completely alone. He headed deeper into the gardens, past where you'd been standing. And when I looked back to the figures, they had disappeared. I had a bad feeling about it, so I went to tell one of the guards. And sure enough, they found the ambassador dead soon after.
An unsettled expression comes across Celeste's face as she lowers her gaze, although something about her personality tells me she's probably familiar with such grisly details, considering her father's important position.
The murderers didn't see you then? Do you think you're safe?
I'm quite sure I am, but I know they noticed you, Rivian.
Because
They
you are
stopped
not
whispering
smooth.
when you came close, and they watched you after your cute friend walked up. It's a good thing he found you, honestly.
Can I have his number?
Either way, I think they suspect you saw them, or at least know about them. And one of the new friends I met here told me he accidentally involved you in things last night.
Stay away from Franz, because then Riv's gonna get real rude. I swallow, feeling small beads of perspiration purl along my hairline. Franz's guess may have been right. Perhaps they're looking for me after all.
Your new friend, eh? Are you talking about that bratty, stammering boy, Alistair?
Don't talk about him like that. He's such a darling little thing. Although, he's keeping some kind of secret, I think. He got all nervous when I asked him some questions, and stammered something about protecting
Move
someone.
around. Well, that sounds familiar. That boy definitely has more information that I need, but I just need to find some way to get it out of him.
Anyway, I just wanted to tell you to be careful. If the disciples are behind this, they won't want to leave behind anyone who can know their identities. You could be in real danger.
Ah, that's just lovely. Well, Celeste, you best watch out for yourself too. You might have been spotted as well, and it seems like you saw much more than I did.
No, she hid herself like a pro, unlike you, and I agree, Blue Cat. Celeste can have art. She lets out a little giggle, shaking her head confidently. I'm really starting to doubt whether she takes all this seriously enough. Life or death matters should not induce giggling.
I can take care of myself. Besides,
Get down!
When an urgent yell suddenly cuts through the air, I instinctively grab Celeste and pull her down to the floor. A split second later, a large crossbow bolt thunks into the wall just behind us. Her gasp was less dramatic than his. With my heart nearly exploding in my chest, my eyes shoot up to the doorway. There, a heavily armored figure stands with a crossbow pointing directly at us. Is that... No, it can't be. A guard? The guard grunts in disgust and throws the crossbow to one side, pulling out a blade from a scabbard at his side instead. His focus, however, doesn't seem to be on us anymore. Instead, he turns to the side, suddenly raising his sword defensively. A loud clang resounds throughout the air, and the guard staggers back into the room. The figure who follows after him with long strides is...
Franz!
Of course it is. We're firmly entrenched in this route. Before I can even stop myself, I call out Franz's name anxiously, like the damsel that I am. He approaches the guard with an aggressive stance, a piercingly focused look in his eyes. In one hand, Franz holds a long, elegant sword, while his other grips a dagger, the two blades' pointed edges gleaming with lethal sharpness. Celeste backs into a corner, staring at Franz with wide eyes. She looks like she recognizes him. Well, she would, wouldn't she? Silas said Franz was watching her at the party. There's no time to think about that. Yes. The guard, who's just as tall as Franz, and maybe even a little broader, brings his sword down in a savage cut. But Franz starts back, moving surprisingly fast. Then, as the guard recovers, Franz dashes back in, swiping at the man's exposed neck. Barely managing to block in time, the guard uses his bulky strength to savagely chop forward, only to be parried with a fast side swipe of Franz's dagger. It's clear that Franz is the quicker man, that's for damn sure, but he's got none of the guard's armor, and his blades won't pierce anywhere but weak spots.
I can dance all night, you know. Better give up while you can, or we'll bore our lovely audience.
They trade blows back and forth at increasing speed. The guard's movements resembling a field soldier, while Franz looks like a court-trained fencer, elegant and swift. Rivian's super into it. Desperately looking around for a way to help, my eyes fall upon a heavy-looking candlestick lying nearby. I grab a hold of it with both hands, hefting its sturdy weight, then focus my gaze on the guard's back.
Take this, you fat metal can!
With all my strength, I hurl the candlestick towards the armored man. It slams into his flank with an awful mix of thud and a clang, sending him staggering off balance. Franz doesn't hesitate for a moment, dashing forward to plant his boot into the guard's knees. Sure enough, our attacker goes tumbling to the floor, landing head first against a heavy crate.
That's got to hurt a little.
I can't help but wince as the guard's head lolls to one side, the fall likely knocking him completely unconscious. After sheathing his two blades in the scabbards attached to his belt, Franz lowers down onto one knee in front of the man's limp form, yanking his helmet off. The guard's revealed face resembles that of a mercenary more than anything, with a savage scar across one eye, a broken-looking nose, and lips permanently curled into a cruel expression.
Why did a guard attack us? Are we wanted criminals?
Celeste's trembling voice comes from where she's still huddled in the corner, biting her lip nervously. I'm a little shaken up too, although an unusual sense of exhilaration permeates me as much as anything else.
I'd wager that this is no guard. He's a wolf in sheep's clothing, using the armor to try and hide his identity. I'm sure Glasses will love to have a little chat with him in the dungeons. I almost feel sorry for this poor fool.
I study the guard's shape curiously, my mind flitting to the words Celeste was telling me just minutes ago.
Celeste, could this man be one of the figures you saw last night in the bushes?
She blinks at my words, cautiously examining the unconscious man while stepping closer.
I think he's the same one. If he was wearing that armor, then that explains why he looks so bulky.
It seems he wanted to get rid of both of you at once. I bet he was afraid you were getting close to figuring things out.
Well, I mean, Celeste maybe. Rivian not at all. He did not have to worry. I breathe a silent sigh of relief at knowing our attacker will be safely locked up for now. Yet a sense of uneasiness continues to tingle down my spine.
But Celeste saw two people together last night. There must still be another murderer out there. One clever enough to not get so easily caught like this bastard.
A grim silence follows my words, along with a foreboding cloud that weighs heavily in the air. Rather than feeling safe, I can't help but dread the idea that the second murderer is going to target us even more now that we've captured their co-conspirator. After a few long tense moments, Franz finally pulls himself back up to his feet, grabbing the guard beneath his arms.
Let's go leave this unpleasant fellow in Sir Four Eyes' tender care, shall we?
Hold on a moment. I want to know where you were spying on Rivian and me first.
Celeste, who appears to have regathered her composure somewhat, trains an accusing glare on Franz. I'm curious too. He's my bodyguard, so step off. But a decision. It's been a while. I'm curious too, or he's my bodyguard. I didn't save until a while ago and I can't now. It's too late. I just have to live with the decision that he's my bodyguard. Clearing my throat, I offer Celeste a reassuring grin.
Actually, Franz here is my unofficial bodyguard. With all the unpleasant murder business going on, I thought it'd be best to have someone at my side.
Franz looks a little surprised by my response, shooting me a curious look. I don't trust her. She knows too much. It doesn't take long, though, for his eyes to light up warmly. He nods in agreement, bowing a little to emphasize my statement.
It's as he says, my lady. I have to keep a close watch on him at all times so that he doesn't accidentally get his pretty head lopped off.
I don't fully trust her. So, you know, let me stick with the people that we know.
That may be true, but still, you look awfully familiar. I could have sworn I'd seen you somewhere else before.
Also, we can ask him about it later. As Celeste studies Franz curiously, suspiciously, not curiously, I realize she doesn't fully recognize his identity. But if she's an ambassador's daughter, and he's part of the Peruvian royal family, they probably encountered each other before at some diplomatic event.
I think you may be mistaken, miss. I'm merely a common chivalrous rogue, dedicated to rescuing such damsels in distress as you two.
Damsels? Franz ignores my burning glare and just grins wolfishly instead. Although she still looks doubtful, Celeste huffs a little and shrugs her shoulders, adjusting her hair with one hand. She is just the female Riv, but the more competent, better female Riv.
Well, I'll let you two deal with him. Papa's probably word sick about me, so I'd better get back to our family suite.
Are you really an ambassador's daughter? She pauses, glancing over towards me with her lips pursed slightly in concern.
Be careful, Rivian. I'm going to lay low until after the party's over, and you should probably do the same. And make sure not to trust just anyone.
Already started. Celeste shoots a look over towards Franz, a delicate frown on her pale features, before she shakes her head and hurries towards the door. She disappears around the corner, and within a few seconds, her lightly pattering footsteps fade into silence. Franz and I are left alone in the storage room, well save for the unconscious man snoring in Franz's grip. Okay, so that's all the time I have for tonight. We will come back to this, hopefully sooner than a week. But I am still really very much enjoying it. And honestly, because the choices don't come as frequently, they have a bit more of stakes to them, I find. And also they're not where you'd expect them to be, which I like. Also because of that, I'm not saving quite as much. So I have to live more with my decisions. So all of you, thanks so much for joining me. I will see you all again when I can. And until then, enjoy the rest of your day, night, evening, whatever you're doing. See y'all again soon. Bye.